Today's lecture is about industry as a fundamental input to capability and perspective from operator to provider. We're very fortunate to have with us today Pietro, who's leading Lockheed Martin to achieve its vision to be Australia's partner of choice for defence aerospace sustainment technology solutions. Piet served in the Royal Australian Navy for just over 39 years, where he flew over 5,000 hours in a mix of military and civilian fixed and rotary aircraft. His naval career including senior leadership roles in aviation, squadron, shore and joint commands, professional military education, diplomacy, safety and risk management and system safety. He served as the Naval Attaché to the United States, where he was awarded the Legion of Merit for the Officer Division. He was the Director General Naval Capability, Planning and Engagement, and now was Commander of the Fleet Air Arm, where significant recapitalisation took place of the Fleet's air arm facilities and aircraft fleet. He holds a Master of Arts in Strategic Studies from Deakin University and is a Fellow of the Royal Aeronautical Society, the Royal Society of New South Wales and the Australian Institute of Company Directors. And he's going to speak to us today about the dramatic reorientation that has occurred in Australia's defence and its supporting industry in recent years with the announcements of the federal government. And those people who have been involved with defence and defence industry over recent years has known as being a very mixed bag in relation to the way governments turn the tap on. There'll be a flood and then all of a sudden they'll turn the tap off and there's nothing, and it's left industry high and dry. I think we have gone beyond that now. We're very much a dramatic reorientation in relation to the defence and defence industry. So it's a great pleasure to invite to speak to us today Pietro, AMCSC, Chief Executive of Lockheed Martin, who will give us his perspectives from operator to provider with industry as a fundamental input to capability. Thank you.
Thank you all very much indeed for allowing me to invade your meeting. Congratulations on what is an extraordinary facility. I'd also please like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land and where we meet, but also very importantly the sacrifice and those since the traditional owners whose memory and service is recognised in this place. So what I'm going to do is I'm holding this phone up because I'm a millennial trying to keep up with my emails. It's because I can't find the hard copy of the speech, so I've just pulled it down on my phone and I'll just use the phone. The other thing I need to fully disclose is that the very kindly gentleman who introduced me to my wife 38 years ago is in the room, so I'm going to keep this as very concise and as appropriate as I can in case word gets back to the girl who's still a bride. What I want to do is, before you can start talking about the present, and certainly before you deserve the right to project into the future, you'd better give a jolly good thought to the past and how it is we got here. Because we're always, I think, a little bit guilty of not realising that every one of us is a custodian. None of us owns anything except our own reputation and our own commitment. Everything else that we are put into life on the planet, we are the custodians. I treated my naval service for 39 years and 7 months that way, and I was delighted to have had every possible reward under the sun, even those I didn't ask for. Equally, this job has been a terrific opportunity and a great experience, but I also realise that I'm just the custodian in a very long line, and I'll walk you through why. So, the journey today is going to be a little bit about who am I, not because I like talking about myself, but just because so you get some credibility from me being here in the first place. The second thing I wanted to talk about is what is Lockheed Martin? What are we? Both corporately in the global sense, but very importantly, what's the association been with Australia? The third thing I want to do is just what I call a peek in the rearview mirror. Let's just have a look at what Lockheed Martin has done in Australia and how far back. And then I want to have a little bit of a look out the windscreen to see what the future might look like with what we can bring to the discussion. And then the final bit is we're going to have a look at the workforce of the future, because I am not a subscriber to the notion that there is something wrong with the youth of today. I'm sorry, and I won't say the word bullshit on television, but I think that's not true. It is very, very important to realise exactly what we do have in Australia and the talent that's coming up through the schools. And I'll show you with some real pictures of exactly what I've had the privilege of being a part of in the last months. It's been terrific. And the final thing is we're going to talk about. I'm going to take off my jacket, we're going to turn off that machine, and you can ask me whatever you want. If I can answer you, I will. Let's just start. I can begin. My background, as you've already heard, is naval aviation predominantly. Just shy of 40 years of service, and thoroughly enjoyed every minute of it. Joined at 17 and a week at HMAS Cerberus in 1976, and went off to be pilot trained through the Air Force system at RAF Point Cook and RAF Base Pearce in Western Australia. And then subsequent to that, just spent a great deal of time flying both fixed and rotary wing aircraft in a couple of iterations, totaling about 5,000 hours. Lucky enough to command a squadron, lucky enough to get a couple of flights at sea, and also the last 3 years of service being my command of the Fleet Air Arm. So that's basically it. I won't go into too much more detail than that. But if I could just show you what I walked you through, who's Lockheed Martin Australia. Let's have a peek in the rearview mirror. Let's look out the windscreen and the workforce of the future, and then we'll have a tour. Next slide. I just put up 3 slides of the last 3 years in uniform, because this was probably the most significant recapitalisation of equipment for the Royal Australian Navy, certainly for the Fleet Air Arm, in so many ways. It's the MH-60 Romeo helicopter. It looks like its older brother, which I picked up in 1988 in Stratford, Connecticut, the S-70B2. They look almost identical. But what's in the machine has proven that if you're on a really good thing and you've got a good taxi, just change the technology in it. Don't worry too much about changing the platform. There's a lot to be learned in that, and that's something that's going to carry on through the next decades with the F-35. We'll look through that very slowly as well. It's an amazing machine. It's probably the world's most competent, it is the world's most competent maritime combat helicopter. Sikorsky was acquired by Lockheed Martin about 3 years ago, and the reason for that acquisition was basically to take the rotary wing dynamics of the next generation of future vertical lift, or what we call future vertical lift, and treat it much the same way as we've managed the Joint Strike Fighter and the next evolution of fighter aircraft into the 5th generation technology. Next slide, please. Like I say, this is just some of my favourite pictures. I wish I was in the machine, but I wasn't. Next. And that's probably the greatest single return in tactical terms for the Royal Australian Navy, is the dipping sonar. We used to be absolutely expert at it with the Wessex and then the Sea King, and then we watched all those skills atrophy as we took the dipping sonar out of our inventory, and now we're getting back into that game. Now this particular sonar is built by a French company called Thales. It is only active, so in other words it can't listen, it can only emit energy in the water to look for submarines in a very aggressive and active way. For the passive side of it, how we want to listen and learn and see what's actually in the water without them knowing we're listening, we use sonar boards and technologies like that. But it is a quantum leap back to the future for us. I think in the future the submarine in the South China Sea is going to be the weapon of choice. And it doesn't mean you have to go out there and sink it every time. You've just got to know where they are, and you've just got to be there present to make sure you're just stopping them doing what they want to do in the ocean, and that you're actually being able to exert your positive influence, namely Australia's, in being a partner of choice and wanting just to trade and use the sea for what it's designed to be used for. So it's a really terrific machine. I wish we bought more of them, and I'm sorry to say that on record, but I wish we bought more of them. I think that the RE could certainly do more than the 24 that are required. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's talk about Lockheed Martin for a minute. So most people don't realise that the connection with Australia for Lockheed Martin is a really, really long one. So after the First World War, the first person to fly across the Arctic and the Antarctic was Sir Hubert Wilkins. Now he tried it in 3 different types of machine. The third one was successful, and that's a picture of it there. It's a Lockheed Vega. He was in a hotel in Burbank, and he saw this machine having just failed his 3rd attempt. And he saw this machine flying around in the skies, and he thought, that's the machine for me. I bet you that could do what I wanted to do. And in fact, he did fly it across the Arctic Circle twice, and then across the Antarctic once. So the connection with Lockheed for Australia goes back to that Australian back in the late 1918 period, early 1919. Next slide, please. Now, Sir Hubert Wilkins, The machine that he failed to cross the Arctic in the second time was a Fokker trimotor. And when he decided to replace the trimotor, it was a 3-engine machine with the single-engine Vega. Hold that thought. Single engine versus 3. To cross the Arctic, what could possibly go wrong? When he decided to do that, he wanted to dispose of his Fokker trimotor. And a couple of young upstarts saw the ad in the paper, and it was these two gentlemen, Charles Kingston Smith on the right and Charles Ulm on the left. And they bought that trimotor and it became the Southern Cross. If you want to see the Southern Cross, it's at Brisbane Airport right now. So as far back as the early 20s, the connection with Lockheed was already getting deeper by the second. Why? Because the machine of choice that Smithy went to do some of the more difficult record-breaking missions that he wanted to fly from London to Australia, across the Tasman, around Australia, he chose another single-engine machine, a Lockheed Altair, which became the Lady Southern Cross. Now, of course, he and Tommy Bethybridge were lost at sea on the 9th of November 1935 in the Andaman Sea in that machine. So, of course, we have no remnants of it other than a few bits that have been dived on and recovered. But the point being is that the connection with Lockheed was significant. And just for a little bit of interest's sake, a little bit of trivia questioning, if you ever get into a pub and someone asks, does anybody know what all Lockheed aeroplanes are named after? Close. Stars, celestial bodies or constellations. Hercules, Orion, Neptune, Vega, Altair, F-35 Lightning, P-20 and P-38 Lightning. They're all named after celestial bodies. There was only one aircraft in Lockheed's inventory that wasn't. And that was the Lockheed Hudson. Because it was the only machine that was made under licence off the continental USA back in the Second World War. So it was given a name which was not consistent with the nomenclature of the machines. The Lockheed badge, still to this day, is a star, a 5-pointed star, because it started life as the Lockheed Brothers emblem, which was a star with a long tail, and it still is that to this day. So that's just a bit of an aside. Next slide, please. Smithy did quite a lot in the Altair, not the least of which was getting out of an aeroplane in Sydney and saying, "Hello Aussies, my kingdom for a smoke." And apparently that's the one that made it. Next slide, please. That was the Altair, an amazing machine powered by a Pratt & Whitney Wasp engine. Now interestingly, 84 years later, 2 F-35 Lightning Strike Fighters flew from Luke Air Force Base in Arizona and all the way to Avalon with about 14 air-to-air refuels across the Pacific each. And both of those machines were powered by a single Pratt & Whitney engine 84 years later. So the connections there are very deep at the corporate level. Now that particular hangar there, if you were to go to Sydney Airport now, that's about Terminal 2, about Gate 4, is where that shed is. I'm ready to leave. So, next slide. So what else has Lockheed done in Australia? Well, the Hercules has served Australia. Last year was the 60th anniversary of Hercules operations in Australia. We were the first overseas customer of the Hercules aircraft of Lockheed Aircraft Corporation. We've flown the A model, the E model, the H model and the J model is currently in service, the Super Herc. Next slide. We also had a very long relationship with the P2 Neptune. That served Australia as our first long-range maritime patrol aircraft with any serious capability for many decades. And it was replaced by the P3 Orion, which is still in service today, on its way out of course with the P8 replacing it. But that machine celebrated its 50th anniversary last year. And while we're on the subject of anniversaries, next slide please. The Lockheed Constellation, Super Constellation. They were the aircraft that made Australia's transcontinental aspirations of air travel a reality. Now that machine actually celebrated its 60th anniversary since arriving in Australia last year as well. So last year was a big year, 2018 for Lockheed and its connection with Australia. Next. What are we doing these days? Well, some of you are pretty familiar with that, I hope. That's Australia's latest air warfare destroyer, HMAS Hobart. The brains of that ship, which is basically everything that sits north of there. The brains of that ship is the Aegis Combat Data System. That is a Lockheed Martin which is built for the United States Navy as the owners of the IP, but that is effectively the most advanced combat data management system available. Now, this particular variant on the 3-air warfare destroyers is variant 8.1. We've just been approved to be the combat system provider and the integrator for the Hunter class frigates, the next future frigate program, where we'll be building 9 of these units, but to the next level up, which is standard 9.1, baseline 9.1. The difference being between the two is that 9.1 is largely driven by completely digitised off-the-shelf technology, and its availability and its longevity in the ship doesn't actually require specialist dockyard type work to do what you would have to do in variants before this one, for example, where you have to take basically a lot of components out of the ship and repair separately. So it's quite an amazing step forward. Next slide, please. This is the production line of the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter at Fort Worth in Texas. Now, there are 3 of these manufacturing sheds. They're basically huge production lines that were built during the Second World War. This is the one that's in Texas. It is 1 mile and 25 feet long, which is 25 feet longer than the other 2, because the governor of Texas at the time said we're not having the same as anybody else. Now, inside this shed, we also built, not we, but have been assembled, the wartime FB-29s, and also the F-111, the General Dynamics. And it's now the home of the F-35 production. F-35 production at the moment, last year we met our target of 91 production aeroplanes in what we call low rate production, and now we're ramping up to max rate production. And by the time that hits, there will be about 3,500 of these machines produced for the current customer base. And I'll walk you through a little bit more about that in a moment. But on this line, the one thing you notice if you ever have the privilege to visit it is that it is absolutely silent. There's no hammering, there's no riveting, there's no drilling. It's all carbon composite and an amazing technology putting these things together. And the noisiest part of the whole evolution is the little golf carts you can see that drive visitors like us around to show them what's happening on the line. And all the way along the line are aircraft that belong, all 3 variants, A, B and C, the A being the conventional takeoff, B being the vertical, and the C being the carrier-borne variant. All of them are being built simultaneously along that line, and for all the customers that have, all the national customers that have joined the joint program. Next slide. That's a couple of our Australian machines with kangaroos on the side. We have taken delivery of 10. 2 have arrived in Australia and now at base Williamtown. They arrived on the 10th of December, and they too flew across the Pacific, having refuelled 16 times because they cut Guam out of the leg this time. They went from Luke Air Force Base to Hickam straight to Amberley down to Newcastle for their arrival. They're an extraordinary machine because of what they bring to warfare, and we'll talk about that later. Please forget everything you've heard about it's no good in a dogfight and, you know, the technology of the places is better. That is just not true. That is just not true. Interestingly, the cost of these machines is actually cheaper than one of the places. Why? Because of the technology involved in the assembly and the componentry and exactly all of the things that go into this machine to make it so amazing, being of the current generation of technology. Therefore, you'd expect it to be more reliable, much easier to work. And that is all proving to be true. So, next slide. There it is touching down. That's airframe number 9, touching down for the first time at Ground Base Williamtown on the 10th of December. And 2 of these machines escorted 4 F-18 Hornets into the runway. It was nice to see 2 of these looking out before their older brothers. Next. Let's talk a bit about Lockheed Martin Australia. I've got some of these to take away with you. Please feel free to do so. This is what I call my infographic. It's just not, it was not an easy thing to do to try and amplify what it is that Lockheed Martin and Lockheed Martin Australia does, but this tries to capture that in basically a very simple diagram. 2 numbers of importance is the 950 Lockheed Martin employees in Australia, so they're folks who work in my team. 950 wearing lanyards with Lockheed Martin Australia on them. But very importantly, as of the end of November, 3,687 Australians get out of bed every morning to make something we've asked them to make. They don't work for us. We've picked the best of breed in the technologies and the components that they make. They've been been through an incredibly rigorous process to make sure they're not only the best product, but also that their systems and their design laboratories and all that sort of stuff are compliant with the very high standards of cyber protection that we need. And then they're selected to join the global supply chain. Now, as of about halfway through last year, that particular activity was generating $1.4 billion of export earnings for Australian companies to provide components for the F-35. And that's at low rate production. By the time the machine gets to maximum rate production, that number will probably triple. Because every single F-35 that taxis is about 6 to 8% made in Australia. On the right, very importantly, is how do I sort of put that in a diagram. Put very simply the grey bits above, that's if you like the multiplication factor, the number of folks that get out of bed to work for us, and the colour-coded bits down the bottom are the various domains in which we've asked them to do things for us. So maritime systems, command control, communications, computers and so on, air mobility, aircrew training, helicopter maintenance and support, specialist roles, space systems engineering, and our Stellar Lab in Melbourne, which is the first research and development establishment of Lockheed as a corporation off the continental United States, and it's based in Melbourne, in the University of Melbourne precinct. And finally, of course, the air combat and support. Next slide, please. And where do we live? There we are. We're all over the place. We live on every mainland state and territory, and I cannot emphasise loudly enough that I believe the future of Australia is represented in that diagram by virtue of the fact that all of those bubbles live in a region. When you look at the things that are available to us in Gippsland, the Shoalhaven, the Hunter, the Hawkesbury, in Adelaide, in Perth, and in some of the far northern reaches of Queensland, where a lot of people who have served, retire and stay put. The amount of technical expertise and capacity that's up in those regions and around Australia is extraordinary. Now imagine if we could get that message across to some of the folks like my children, to convince them that, hey, living in a region, you were able to afford to live there because it's not going to cost you a fortune to park your car, but also there's all sorts of available technologies and opportunities there for you to plug into. And the only thing lacking, in my view, to make that all possible is the infrastructure necessary to connect them. Fast trains, good roads, so on and so forth. And that wasn't meant to be a political statement, it's just a straight statement of fact. If we're going to tap into the talent and the expertise of people who have served their country, we need to understand how to get to them more. Okay, around the bazaars in Perth and at Gippsland, we're just setting up Project Air 5428, which is the Australian Defence Force's pilot training system, or Navy Army Air, with PC-21. And that goes into IOC, initial operational capability, in around about a couple of weeks from now. In Adelaide, we've got very heavy emphasis on combat systems for the submarine, the frigates, a lot of our radar work, and a lot of our engineering and manufacturing work. In Melbourne, I've already mentioned the Stellar Lab, and we also have our support functions down there, IT, HR, finance, and so on. In Canberra is our headquarters, where my office is. Nowra, we have about 128, 130 people operating the MH60 Romeo and all the maintenance, repair and overhaul facilities for that machine. In Sydney and Holsworthy, we're also still supporting the Black Hawk machine in the special operations role for Army. Richmond, we support the sustainment of the C-130J fleet. In Williamstown, we're just setting up sustainment activity, maintenance, repair and overhaul, and all of the software that goes with making sure the F-35 stays relevant. That's all being set up in Williamstown now. Then over around the corner, Uralla, we own a satellite tracking station. Our space company owns that facility, which we're hoping to expand and provide more commercial services for satellite and space operations. And by that I mean commercial operations. Brisbane, Queensland, we have Sikorsky Aircraft Australia Limited based there. That's a very good operation. At the moment, if you went over to that hangar, there are 6 aeroplanes, 6 helicopters in there, 3 Bristow's machines who come across the country to do their servicing up there with us. We've also got a couple of Royal Thai VIP Squadron Black Hawks in there. So that's a real jewel of the crown. And then in Townsville, we're also supporting Black Hawk. Next slide. Okay, I mentioned the Australian industry participation. This is a pretty important slide. That's actually an F-35, and everywhere on this picture you will see exactly what Australian companies, best of breed, best technology, technically competent, cyber safe, and able to join a global supply chain to make components for every F-35 that taxis. That's the companies that are helping us out. Every Australian ought to be proud as punch of that. Because we tend to always look perhaps a little bit too big, and we always think it's only good enough if it's too big, huge factory. I can tell you some of these companies are not huge, but they are making an incredible contribution and they are generating real wealth and real jobs. And if you're trying to build sovereignty, this is how you do it. Keeping lots of companies healthy, getting them stronger, getting them bigger, exporting, joining the global supply chain, and basically being a part of the game. This is actually one of the reasons I'm really proud to be, just so proud to be a part of Lockheed Martin Australia, because this to me is what I think is the future. Okay, next. Alright, so let's have a look at the future. That was a bit of the rearview mirror. Let's have a look at the future. This is a slide of an activity that occurred in the high deserts of California in 2016, September 12th. I'll just describe it for you. On the left of the picture is a drone, an MQM-107. Now Australia used to have these, we used to call them the Calcara. They're not high supersonic or anything like that, they're just a very low visibility drone that you can fly pretty low and get to a target such that someone's aware for testing electronic warfare and so on and so forth. In the bottom of this picture is a largely unmodified F-35B, so it's the vertical variant that belongs to the US Marine Corps. On the right hand side is what we call Aegis in the desert. So it's an Aegis combat data system bolted to a lookalike frigate sitting in the middle of the desert. This test was really, really significant because what it shows is that many, 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 many miles away from this machine, and I can't tell you how far, but believe me, it was further than you care to walk, detected the electronic signature digitally of that machine. It beamed that data in a short burst through a digital data link, what we call Mabel, to Aegis in the desert. The ship said, okay, let me have another look at that. Same thing happened again. And if I was to tell you that these things were at such a distance that this never saw the target, except visually, this had no idea what this was talking about, and certainly couldn't see that. But the weapon that was launched from here to take that out, because it was decided that, yep, its kinematics are not good, it's actually trying to do us harm, to the extent where the missile that launched from the Aegis in the desert impacted the MQM-107 nose to nose. Now some people would say, so is that unique?
Just a little bit.
Now, interestingly, this is a really interesting bit. The things that Australia has invested in, the MH-60 Romeo, and all of the things in it, Aegis, and all of the things that go with it, F-35, and all the things that go with that, we actually own that stuff now. It's coming online. If we were to give this a really concerted effort, and we are, when I say we, the customer, the department, about this very deeply. If we can actually understand what dialect connects all these things together, because they all come from the same factory in upstate New York, that's called a WIGO, and we can get these to integrate fully, now all of a sudden, a medium power like Australia has a real and lasting relevance over some of the distances we've got to control. Now, some folks say, well, what about the stuff that we already own? No problem. The taxpayer, you and I, have all invested a significant amount of money in the current capabilities, no question. Just because this is all happening digitally doesn't mean that they can't actually be augmented by things that aren't necessarily as digitally competent. So you can still use the stuff we've invested in until it runs out of life to fullest advantage. Why? Because you've got stealth that can actually penetrate whatever something about it. And very importantly, all of the things that are currently in the existing fleet, they remain every bit as relevant as tasked machines to prosecute the target. In other words, if you know where it's coming from and you know what you've got to do to stop it, you find the nearest most available suitable thing to do just that. This is really exciting. And why is it exciting? I think it's because it's defence. It's true defence. I'm not going to start anything, but if you cross that line, I can do something about it. And I can do something about it before you even know I'm there. It's gold. Love it. Okay, next slide. So, the LNA vision is to be the partner of choice for defence, aerospace, sustainment and technology solutions. Why? Because I just think we're in the box seat to be engaged in all of it. I'm not talking about just selling stuff. We want to actually be the partner of choice. When someone wants to talk about something, my vision of a successful day is someone gave us a call and said, we have to talk to you about things because we think you might be able to help us with this. Now, if that turns into a purchase or an acquisition somewhere downstream, that's fine. But it's got to be more about what we're doing for the defence of Australia and how we can bring value to that discussion. So let's talk about the workforce of the future. Someone's got to pick all this stuff up. Why is it important? Let me just give you a couple of parallels. When I had the privilege of serving in uniform, I used to say to the kids down at Narrow as we were introducing the Romeo, it takes the average Australian a lifetime to generate and raise $1 million of taxation. It takes the average Australian a lifetime to generate $1 million of contributions in tax. And here we are talking about machines that are $3.4 billion programs. 3,400 Australians' lifetimes work. We cannot afford to be too precious and think it's all about us because it ain't. We're the custodians. We've got to get this stuff working right and we've got to get it working efficiently from the start. And then the motivation for all of us will be just make sure that we just keep this stuff contemporary and current and we stay ahead of the game. Why? Because it is fair to say, if you think about the machines I just described a few slides ago, the C-130 and the P-3, the P-2, the Constellation, there are people who will be flying the F-35 whose parents have not yet met. There are people who will be sailing in the Aegis destroyer and frigates whose grandparents have not yet met. That's the longevity of these projects. That's the longevity of these artefacts. And now with digital technologies, if you build the artefacts and the platform right in the first instance, which I think we're doing pretty well with, then all you've got to keep doing is making sure that the technology inside it is keeping up. That's why I love the Seahawk Romeo. It looks just like its 30-year-old brother or sister, depending on which one the factory came out. But they couldn't be further apart because of what's in them. So let's have a look at the workforce of the future with those two very sobering thoughts. Next, please. One of the greatest parts of my job is being able to interact with all sorts of folks. Now this here is a thing called the National Youth Science Forum. We're dead smack in the middle of the 2019 cohort. We've just had two teams running through Canberra and Queensland, and I'm just about to do the final dinner for the last lot in Canberra on Thursday night. This is about Rotary International around Australia picks folks that are going into Year 12 who have got a bent for STEM and want to try and do a little bit of, get more engaged in STEM and see what's available. And then the Rotary movement selects them, picks them, and then we parachute them in lots of 200 into either the ANU or the University of Southern Queensland. And they stay there in January of each year, and then we literally bombard them with as much connection and contact with people who are actively involved in STEM as we can. Science, technology, engineering and maths. And this is just a very small selection of last year's lot. Incredible numbers. 43% of these young Australian adults come from the regions, they're not from the cities. 61% of last year's cohort were young women. Now, unfortunately, that's not translating that way out at the end of university. So there's one thing we probably would be rolling our sleeves up with, wondering why. Next slide. We also support Women in Aviation Aerospace Australia. This is for people between 18 and 24 years of age. We don't just buy lunch, we make folks come to these seminars around from Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia. We make these people, we encourage them to bring a peer. I mean, either sex doesn't matter, but it's got to basically be participating in the seminar, which is talking about what the opportunities are across aviation, aerospace and engineering. Now last year we touched 120 young aspirants in that way, and it was a terrific use of money, in my view. Next. Now this one is going to blow your mind, because it certainly blew mine. These are all kids between 12 and 14, and they're very prospective teachers, and in the front are primary school kids, and this is the Formula One in Schools competition in the Hunter Valley. This is in the Cessnock, the Maitland basketball court centre. Now what these kids are doing is their stands are behind them there. Now this is an international competition, and they have to make a Formula One racing car out of balsa wood. And it has to be propelled by one of those little bottles you put into a soda stream, you know, those little green bottles, a little bit like a bottle. And they literally hurl them down these tracks. And they race them against each other. Now here's the thing that blows your mind. Australia has won this competition internationally more than any other nation. The other thing that blows your mind about this particular evolution is that the cars they make involves CAD/CAM, so computer-assisted design and computer-assisted manufacture. It requires them to understand high-resolution resin three-dimensional printing, high-resolution rendering, so they've got to produce the graphics with all the angles, they've got to actually log it and record it. Some of them are even delving and dabbling in laying carbon composite. Between 12 and 14 years of age, not a degree amongst them. And they're picking all that up on the side, just looking at 5 or 6 kids enthusiastic about something, going to the right place on the internet on the web, getting the data and doing something with it. And I spent my day with these people with my jaw hanging mostly on the ground. And then it really hit rock bottom when I asked one of these teams, a lovely team of young Indigenous women, so how long did this take? Thinking like a true baby boomer, at least a year. She looks at me demurely at her friends and I think it was 3 weeks. Anybody who tells me there's something wrong with the youth of today isn't looking hard enough. This is amazing. Next slide. I think I've got one more. We had a competition in Canberra on the 17th of August this year called Code Quest. This was something which Professor Alan Huffey from Sky TV, the Science Channel, helped us advertise. And these are all kids between 15 and 16. And they come from around Australia. We had 17 teams. And they literally invade Lockheed Australia House in Canberra. We set them up into a very high technology computer lab, which we bring from the States in the UK to assemble for them. And then we pit them against each other, where they're actually competing with themselves by working down a list of 25 potential activities. And the further you get down the list, the more points you get. If I was to say to you what these kids were doing with coding and being able to understand the depth and breadth of what a computer can do, and this is just over 2.5 hours on a Saturday morning in Canberra, it would honestly blow your mind. It's just sensational. It's just sensational. And the best thing I got out of this day was that t-shirt, because I could actually hang myself off there, because they were far brighter than I'll ever be. But as you can see, I mean, there's not a great deal of age in that photo. And it's just inspirational to see some of these folks and what they do, and how they use technology to the greatest possible advantage in the most non-threatening of ways. I just wish the media would catch some of this, because we hear a lot of bad stuff about technology, but it's not all bad. some of it is actually really essential to make sure these people's minds stay stimulated to the extent we need them to stay stimulated. And then we've got to make sure that we don't watch 97% of our PhDs disappear overseas. We've got to stop that. And the 3% that stay, we've got to make sure we're not spending 3/4 of their life writing essays to put food on the table. We need them to use their brains, not their pens. So that's just that is a personal, that's not a company position, that's my personal position as a father of 3 young women, all tertiary educated, but I've just seen what they've gone through. I've got a school teacher, a social worker and a neuroscientist. Thanks. So I think that's probably enough from here. Just broke the microphone.